There's a lot of ways to catch walleyes across the Midwest in June. Jigs, crankbaits, Lindy rigs, and spinners are all really popular. But today I'm going to show you an exciting alternative that's going to help you catch more fish this week on the water. Got him. Boy, there is nothing quite like fishing the way I'm fishing as far as being efficient. And here's what I'm talking about. What I'm actually doing today is I'm just driving around, and you can hear the big motors running. I mean, the big motor never shuts off with this technique. I'm driving around, and what I'm doing is I'm staring at this graph. And boy, you know, quality electronics make a huge difference in this presentation. And there he is. Let's get him up here. Quality electronics make a huge difference with this presentation because I was able to see this fish. And this walleye is just sitting up off the bottom. And we can look at the screen right now. There are fish all over it. And what I'm looking for is fish that are up. And when I say fish that are up, fish that are arcing up above the bottom. There's a lot of fish that are belly on the bottom and they're not biting yet. But when I see an arc up above the bottom, I flip my cork right over the back of the boat, okay? And then I drift away from it a little bit, and that's important. You don't want to stay right on top of it because this fish, he can feel that boat over the top of you. You know, we got high, bright skies today, and there's a shadow down there. So I let the boat just drift away, and then I twitch that cork just a little bit. And it's, you know, 1 out of every 2 or 3 drops, you're going to get a fish when they're up and active. That's a great eater walleye, a great way to start our day. You know, a lot of times I've flipped on some fish out here, and a lot of times you'll be drifting along watching that bobber and you'll see another fish right underneath the boat because you're drifting so slow. And that's what I saw. So I just quickly reeled to the boat and I just put the boat in a position where I can actually drift away, just set that bobber down. Look at that fish. That's a good eye right there. Let's get him in here. But you know, what we're doing, get him all settled down here. What we're doing is just such a neat technique because you're constantly moving. And you know, a lot of people will ask me, how do you know where to set your depth? Here's what I tell them. I look for the top of the structure. I really want to use this technique up on top of structures, okay? When I find the top of the structure, I set a foot above the fish. Now you got to remember what I said there is a foot above the fish, not a foot above the bottom. A lot of these fish, what I want to make them do is come up, because if I can get them to come up, they're going to get more active. You know, it's the whole school around them is going to get more active and start coming up. And that's how you end up with doubles and triples. Now, you're not seeing that today because it's only me fishing alone. But these fish, they're in wolf packs down there hunting. And if you can get them to start moving up, and a walleye's eyes are on the top of his head, if you get them to start moving up, you're going to be able to get them to bite, because very seldom is a walleye, and you can look at this guy. I mean, those eyes are on top of his head. He sees up, okay? If you can get this guy to move up, very seldom is a fish like this going to halfway up say, no, I don't think so. They're going to keep coming and they're going to grab it. Let's let this guy go, and then I want to show you the exact tackle that I'm using because it makes a big difference and it's going to help you catch fish when you're doing this. There he goes. You know, it is so simple what I'm doing here. It is very important that you have the right stuff. And it starts right here. This is a Pro Series Thill float. What's so special about this float is that brass grommet in the top. Without that brass grommet, the line would not slide through as quickly as I need it to, because when I flip on these fish, I want it to get down fast. So that brass grommet is very important. It can't cut a groove in the top after I set the hook a bunch of times during the day, and the line will fly through it. The other thing I do is, a lot of people use a plain hook underneath their slip bobber rig. But what a plain hook does is it hangs vertical. Now, if I'm hanging vertical, that leech is going to be vertical, or that night crawler is going to be vertical, and that's not how they would naturally look in the water. They're horizontal and they're swimming. Well, by using a lead head jig, like what I'm using here, this is a 32 ounce Lindy jig, it hangs horizontal, so that leech or that crawler's off to the side and it's swimming along. So I get a little bit of color, but I also get that look of a natural presentation, and that's why these fish are biting. Go, got him. Boy, that was a textbook road hunting fish right there. I'll tell you what, there were 2 of them there. I guarantee you, if I had a couple guys in the boat, we'd have another one on right now too, because there were 2 of them, and that bobber, that knot didn't get to that float for, 20 seconds. The minute it got there, that float went down. But one of the things I want to talk about too is picking the right location to do this, because it's not one of those things that you can just go do anywhere. It's one of those presentations that you want to go do on a gravel bar or a mud flat that has one of 2 things. Either a flat top, and what I mean by a flat top is something where, the spot we're on right now comes up out of 24 feet, tops off at 20, and then there's a couple little spots on it that are 19, but I can, for the most part, set my depth and leave it there. And when I set it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be, like I said, about a foot above the fish. A lot of times that means 2 to 3 feet above the bottom, okay? Or if you're on a mud flat, you can do the same type of thing. But the gradual drop is important, because if I go out over 24 feet of water and I still see a fish, I can still drop on them, because they'll come up 5 feet to hit it a lot of times. But if you got a steep drop, where you're working an area where maybe you have a drop that goes, 10 feet. Boy, when you go out over that edge, it's going to be pretty hard to get this guy to come racing up and commit to hit. So you'd be changing your depth all the time. So that's what I want you to look for when you're out there looking for a place to do this. Is look for something where you've got a gradual drop or a nice top, and the fish are all over the top of it feeding. That's the other thing, is the tops are always feeding structures. It's where I start first. Look at the graph right now. In 21 feet of water right on top, there's another fish right underneath the boat. Look at that guy. We're gonna throw this guy back, and we're gonna go back down and try to catch that one. He's got a buddy with him behind him too. I'm looking at the weather forecast for the rest of the week, and I'll tell you what, it just looks awesome. If you can get the time to get away and go fishing, I couldn't think of a better week to do it. The weather is supposed to be just like today for most of the week, and that's just great, because I'll tell you what's happening. This is stable weather. When you get stable weather, fish get very comfortable in the mode they're in. And this guy here, he hit that pretty quick. But when these fish get comfortable with the mode they're in, they'll just hit nonstop. Now, looking at the rest of the week, everything looks stable. Light winds, highs in the mid 70s, which is great. And then when we get to the weekend, you're looking at highs up into the 90s. If that holds true, I'll tell you what, this is going to be dynamite, because the fish have already made their first big major move of the year. They came out here into deeper structure. They're easy to find right now. This technique is dynamite at this time of year too, because you can graph them. You see them there, you throw out on them, and you catch them. It's as simple as that. If you can get out this week, do it. It's going to be a dynamite week to be on the water. Boy, that was a great day on the water today. The keys to the catch were real simple. It's all about being above the fish. If you're below the fish when you're bobber fishing, they're not going to see it, because the walleye looks out the top of his head with those eyes, and he can see everything above him, and he'll chase it if it's up above him. If it's below him, he's never going to see it, and he's not going to be able to get it. One more tip this week. We're headed toward another bug hatch. It's got to happen sooner or later, and with all the stable weather it looks like we're going to get this week and calm water, that's what lights these things off. So if you do get a bug hatch this week while you're up here, what you need to remember is switch to crawlers. Crawlers under a bobber are just fine. Just go ahead, hook it right through the nose, and then pinch him off halfway down right below that collar, and crawlers catch a ton of fish underneath a bobber. They're very effective during a bug hatch. The tactic I showed you today, works anywhere where there's deep water and walleyes sitting on top of structure. So don't just think it's for Mille Lacs, it's anywhere you fish. For more current and up-to-date information, check back with us next week. I'm John Thielen. We'll catch you on the water.